This isn't Euphoria enough for my liking. I can change that. Let's add a bit of neon, and there we go. Now we're cooking.
I fucking hate this town. If I could, I'd burn it to the fucking ground.
So, it's no secret that I love Euphoria. It's also no secret that I am physically incapable of having healthy relationships with the things I enjoy. And so, here we are, yet again. I basically wanted to make a video where I read all of the books that are featured in the TV show Euphoria. However, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but they don't read books in that show. They're treating the school like a fashion runway, not an education institution. These characters don't even have pencil cases, let alone books. And considering this is a high school drama, we don't actually see a single classroom in season 2. In fact, I'm pretty sure the whole premise of Euphoria is like, hey, imagine if these teenagers were actually in their 30s. And so, as a result of that, the only book that we actually see a character reading is Lexi reading Plato's Republic, which, listen, I love you guys, I love making these videos. I'm not reading Plato's Republic. She can keep that one. What's she gonna do? Write a play about me? And so instead, I turned to the cast of Euphoria who bring these characters to life. So welcome back to my celebrity book club where we're gonna be reading books recommended by the cast of Euphoria. Quick disclaimer, of course, is that there are a lot of cast members of this show. So unfortunately, I can't cover all of them, just like the writers couldn't cover Kat's storyline in season 2. He went there. In fact, this show has so many incredible actors and they keep adding more in, like Dominic Fike is in it now. By the way, loved his Tiny Desk concert in the season finale. Not sure why that happened, but I enjoyed it. And I actually think that maybe every song ever should be Dominic Fike featuring Zendaya. I think the world would be a better place. To be honest though, if I could swap lives with any of the actors in Euphoria, I think I'd be the one who plays Gia. Hear me out. Her day at the office is wearing her pajamas, crying, and hanging out with Zendaya. That's the dream job, right? So I have books recommended by Sydney Sweeney, aka Cassie, Hunter Schafer, aka Jules, Jacob Elordi, aka Nate, and Zendaya, aka the love of my actual life. So, let's get reading. But before we dive into that, I wanted to give a massive shout out to Squarespace for very kindly sponsoring today's video. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the platform to go to find everything all in one place if you want to start building your online presence. I am currently creating my own website and it's really important to me to be able to customize it and make something that is completely my own and can do all of the things that I need it to do. And with Squarespace, I can build something completely fit for purpose. Some cool features you can find on Squarespace are the ability to make a blog and also to create a members only area. The analytics tools are really useful for working out what people actually want to see from you so you know what to make more of. Get that engagement and start running your online business today. So if that sounds like something that you are looking for as well, then head over to Squarespace where you can get a free trial, and then when you're ready to launch your snazzy new website, you can go to squarespace.com/jackedwards, that's me, to save 10% of your first purchase of a website or domain. Use the code JackEdwards, you are welcome. And I'm excited to be building my own website too, so watch this space.
Yeah, I'm not supposed to be here right now because I'm dressed like a hooker and none of you like me. But I just wanted to say congratulations. So, the first place that I found a Euphoria cast book recommendation was actually on Jacob Elordi's Instagram story. The caption is short and sweet, there's a picture of the book, and then it says, "For those in need of a read." And you know what? I am. I fit the criteria. And the book featured was this one. This is Ethan Hawke's A Bright Ray of Darkness. Now listen, I loved this book. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, but I was completely enthralled by this. I enjoyed it more than Maddie and Cassie enjoyed The Fairground in season 1. That's how much I enjoyed this book. It's essentially this detailed character study of a Hollywood film star who is making his Broadway debut in a Shakespeare play. Trouble is, he's kind of public enemy number 1, and that is because he cheated on his also very famous rock star wife. So he's being absolutely slaughtered in the press, people in the street like hate him, and the book is actually semi-autobiographical because Ethan Hawke himself is a big Hollywood actor and did also cheat on his wife. So there's some similarities there, and I don't know, when I heard the kind of backstory behind this book, I expected to hate it, I expected to despise this book, but I was really pleasantly surprised by it. Beneath everything, we have this really broken and troubled man who knows he's made a massive mistake, probably the biggest of his life. It's fascinating to see the perspective of someone who has nowhere to turn and nowhere to hide. And it's like there's this perpetual spotlight on him and his life. Kind of like this light is currently
blinding me. He makes terrible decisions, he is constantly making mistakes and being an awful bloke. But the book is this fascinating study on fame, on family, the craft of acting, as well as the sentiment of remorse and self-hatred. The writing is so original and heartfelt and witty, you really feel every emotion that he is going through. And he sets up lots of interesting conversations with different people that this actor encounters in his day-to-day life. So you have his co-stars, a taxi driver, his family, and the intriguing dynamics between those characters leads to some really interesting conversations and observations. It's definitely more focused on character over plot, but it does have some good little twists and turns. And we join this character when he is at rock bottom and he's about to make his Broadway debut. And we sort of linger on this moment where he's waiting for the reviews to come in that will come to define his performance. And weirdly, I don't know if it's because I got this recommendation from Jacob Elordi's Instagram story, but I was imagining him when I was imagining this character. Maybe it's because the character is flawed in a similar way to Nate Jacobs. I mean, Nate Jacobs has a wild ride in Euphoria. Literally, while the other kids at Euphoria High are doing their biology homework, Nate Jacobs is holding a gun to Maddie's head and phoning the police on his own father. He has a pretty crazy time, and I think Jacob Elordi would be perfectly suited to playing this role. I actually watched a few interviews with him where he was talking about his fascination with kind of old school Hollywood films and movie stars. And I can definitely see that in his interest in this book. So to conclude, I thought it was completely and utterly fascinating to walk a mile in this character's shoes and contemplate what you do and what you feel when you've basically ruined your own life and it's completely your own fault, and how you kind of pick up the pieces and grow from there. Anyway, I devoured this book. I underlined so many lines, more lines than Rue was doing in Euphoria. Okay, on to the next book.
You guys can all judge me if you want, but I do not care. I have never, ever been happier.
So, Cassie is a little busy in season 2 to be reading books, but We Used to Be Friends is a pretty good summary of her plotline. So it's quite interesting that this is the book that Sydney Sweeney recommended. She recommended this in her shelf portrait video on the Marie Claire YouTube channel, and so of course I picked it up and I just finished it. It's a young adult book, which is something I don't often read, but this is basically a much more accurate depiction of what real high school is like. Because there's no Class A drugs in this one. There's no Zendaya being chased by a police car and ending up in rehab in this book. It's more like high school prom is the most important night of our lives. That's the kind of vibe here. So we have two girls who were besties. They were inseparable. They were BFFFLs, I think. However, they fall out and drift apart. As the title suggests, they used to be friends. And then it's told in quite an interesting way because we have these dual timelines and dual perspectives. So we see the narrative from both characters' points of views. But one tells the story moving forwards in time and one tells the story moving backwards. So each chapter alternates between perspectives and they essentially go like this. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So it's definitely an innovative way of telling a story. Did it work? Kind of. It's clever in a way because we both start and end the novel seeing the start and end of their friendship, which kind of exaggerates the difference in their lives now that they're no longer friends. It makes it more devastating. But having said that, I just don't think it was as effective as it could have been, especially because they grow apart through miscommunication. It's quite a gradual thing. So there's not much momentum to the story. There's no big crescendo and climax in the middle of the book where they have the big fallout. It sort of just happens over time. And listen, I don't always think that a big moment of confrontation is necessary because that's not how real life works. But in this book, where we already know what's going to happen because we've started with it, I think it was kind of necessary here. So this is definitely an interesting depiction of friendship and how tensions can arise, especially through miscommunication, especially seeing it from both perspectives because you start to understand why each character is acting in the way that they do and how the other character is interpreting those events, or how one event or action is interpreted differently by two different people, which actually is something that we see a lot in Euphoria, so that's quite cool. However, overall, I think this book is pretty forgettable, pretty immature, definitely light reading, but like, a little bit too light, maybe. To be honest with you, both characters are quite annoying. The dual timelines get a little bit too blurry at times, and it's quite repetitive because we have to hear everything twice. I think it's a book that had potential, but then just ended up being aggressively average. So, sorry, Sydney Sweeney. But also, I guess it is worth noting that I'm not necessarily the target audience for this, so this review should definitely be taken with just a little pinch of salt. And now we're going from high school drama to literal Shakespeare, so it's all about the range.
Rue, are you on drugs?
Yes.
Okay, so this is kind of fun. I am actually in Durham for my university graduation, but the grind never stops. Best believe the Euphoria characters are not graduating until 2033, because I've not seen them mention school once. But anyway, last night was the Oscars, and what the hell? Someone tell me why the Academy Awards turned into Lexi's play in real life. I would say no one could write it, but Sam Levinson literally did. Anyway, while Will Smith was hitting Chris Rock, I was hitting the books. And so I finished the book that Zendaya recommended. It's called 12th Night. You may not have heard of this one. It's by a very underrated, up-and-coming indie author called Shakespeare. And Zendaya recommended it in her 73 questions, probably the biggest honor of Shakespeare's career, to be honest. And in that interview, she not only says that she loves this play, but also that Viola is her favorite character. And basically, the plot of this play is that Viola and her twin brother Sebastian are in a shipwreck. Viola washes up on the shore of what we now know as kind of Serbia, Slovenia, that kind of area. And she's not sure if her brother actually survived or not. She's pretty sure that he didn't make it, and so she's now gonna work out how to survive on this new land. And she decides that the best way to do this would be to dress up as a man. Now, what's important to remember here is that at the time that this play was originally being shown to audiences in Shakespeare's day, women weren't allowed to act on the stage. So female characters would be played by little boys. Meaning, and stick with me here, that there was a little boy playing a woman dressing as a man. So you can see how this is considered a comedy, because it would have been utter chaos and just completely mad. Oh, and actually, if you've seen the movie She's the Man, that's 12th Night. She's the Man is a retelling of 12th Night in a modern context, so there you go. We have a love trial, we have lots of comic relief through misunderstandings. There's a duel, there's a clown who is very melancholy but also pretty hilarious. And a lot of the comedy in 12th Night relies on the crossing of boundaries between gender and class by various characters. The ending of the play is a little abrupt, but who am I to critique literal Shakespeare? And I do think it's one of his more fun plays, so I would recommend reading 12th Night. And thankfully, Zendaya did too. And you know what? It feels only right to be reading some Shakespeare while I'm literally here graduating from my English Lit degree.
In a good way or a bad way?
Bitch, you better be joking.
Okay, this book was difficult to get a hold of, but I managed to hunt her down. See what I did there? And let me just say, what an interesting book to end on. This is the book, it's by Larry Hill, and this is the book that was recommended by Hunter Schafer. And this book is essentially a queer utopia which introduces you to loads of different queer communities. It's about how they live together, how they interact with each other, and how they interact with the world. And so this book is sort of fable meets manifesto. It centers around this commune of queer people who are all living together in a place called Lavender Hill, kind of before the AIDS crisis, and it calls out problems with capitalism, with patriarchy, with heteronormativity, and also attitudes at the time towards drag culture and trans people, gay people, lesbians, and how these people were made to feel despised and fugitive at the time. It's hard to even describe this book. I think it started off as a children's book, so it has this sort of fairy tale quality. It's very whimsical, and there's these illustrations throughout which sort of bring it to life. And ultimately what this book and this utopia seek is peace. It dreams of a world where everyone would just live in harmony. It sort of desires the assimilation of queer people into society, whilst also still maintaining the difference and uniqueness of each individual person. But I suppose what I wanted to end by saying is that I can see why this book is so important to so many people and why it has that status as a kind of cult classic. And I'm really grateful to have ended up reading it. I guess you could say it was a jewel sent from Jules. Hunter Schafer recommended it. Okay, let's end the video. Thank you so much for watching this whole thing. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it left you feeling euphoric. Massive shout out, of course, to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. And of course, the link is down below in the description box. We are getting dangerously close to 1 million subscribers, which is just ridiculous and absurd and stupid. But if you want to join the party, you can click subscribe down below. I would really appreciate it. While you're down there, you can give the video a thumbs up and follow me on my other social media. Until next time, all the best, stay in touch, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.